Morning. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. I think we have all the time zones covered. It is May 27th. This is a Cluster API Azure provider office hours and bi-weekly meeting. We are a sub-project of SIG Cluster Lifecycle. And as such, we try to follow the general Kubernetes community rules, which basically boils down to everybody be kind, try not to talk over each other. Please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom so that our conversation can be more orderly. If you have time and don't mind, please put your name under the attendees list so we know who was here. Do we have anybody who's here for the first time or wants to introduce themselves and say hello? I guess not. Okay, unless anybody else has anything higher priority, I guess we'll go to open discussion. Cecile, you have
sharing your screen, Matt?
Oh, I am not. Let me do that.
Okay.
There. Can everybody see that? Oh, to share your, oh, I don't care about sharing audio.
Perfect, thanks.
Cool. Cecile, you have the first discussion topic.
Yeah, so I have a PR in flight, which so it's bumping the CAPI nightly build to like one from 2 days ago. And we hadn't done that in a while. So like since end of March, I think. So there's a few breaking changes that have gone into CAPI that we need to adopt. So I'm working on those, getting those integrated. The one that I wanted to mention is that recently in CAPI, we renamed the machine pool API group, which used to be exp.cluster to just cluster to match every other API group for the other CAPI CRDs. The reason for that was that eventually we'll want to move machine pool out of experimental. We'll want to make that a G8 feature. And the issue with the current group as it stands is that renaming a group is going to be a breaking change no matter when it happens. And so the later we do it, the more we risk breaking people who actually care. So we thought it's better if we do it earlier rather than later and break people now where there's, from what we know, few users of machine pools versus like down the line when we are ready to move it out of experimental and we might break a lot more people. So as part of that, I'm renaming the Azure Machine Pool API group following the Docker Machine Pool example. So that's going to now be infrastructure instead of exp.infrastructure. And so just a heads up, like, I mean, if you're using machine pools, you're already being broken by the machine pool change anyways, but you also will need, if you're using Azure, to change the Azure Machine Pool group on your existing cluster. But in general, this is an experimental feature, and as such, like there are no guarantees for backwards compatibility. So I think the easiest path forward, if you are using machine pool, is probably to build new clusters from the new group. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And then the other thing is, as part of that, I noticed we're also using this exp group in managed cluster CRDs. So like managed cluster, managed control plane, and managed machine pools. And those are all Azure CAPZ specific. And so I would propose to this group that we, and I can bring this up outside of the meeting as well, if others aren't here, but I would propose that we move those as well outside to the like standard API group for the same reason, because it's going to be a breaking change and it's better that we do it now than if we do it later when there are more users of it. So just wanted to see if that would be anything, like if anyone had any questions on that or any objections.
I was just gonna say we should probably rename everything all at once since we're like doing that breaking change anyway. So +1 from me.
Cool. And by the way, if you are a user of the AKS feature, like experimental AKS with CapZ, that means you're by inference also a user of machine pools. So that means you're already going to be broken anyways. So might as well break you once and have like 2 different occasions where there's a breaking change. Okay.
But this isn't moving them out of experimental, right? This is just an upstream
No.
name change that had to happen. So
yes,
we got to rip off the Band-Aid.
There's still going to be experimental features in the exp folder under feature gate, so disabled by default. But this is changing just the API group for the group version, so that we don't have to do it later when we do want to move them out of experimental. It should have been like that from the beginning, frankly. We just thought it'd be better to like separate the groups and have like an obvious distinction between the two, which made sense, but it also like didn't realize the impact of having to move it later.
Cool. Anybody, any other comments anyone has about this breaking change? Just thumbs up for ripping off the Band-Aid. Yep. Cool. Okay, let's move on to Nader. You have 050.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, I think Vince was saying in the last meeting that he expects the 04 release to be in the next couple of weeks or something. So I think that means we should plan our first release like a couple of weeks after that or something. So I don't know how much work we have left there or any breaking stuff that is still outstanding. We should probably just like take a look and make sure all like the big breaking stuff are kind of accounted for. Does that make sense? Like that we can do it 2 weeks or something after, or? Okay, because we haven't done it. There's a lot of new stuff that we haven't kind of released.
Should we take a look at the milestone just to see where we're at? And I think we're pretty close, but do you want to do that at the end or right now?
We can do it at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Any comments about 050? I guess we'll circle back and look at the milestone next. Okay, Shyam, you want to talk about parallel reconciliation proof of concept? That sounds exciting.
Sure, yeah. So recently I had a PR open for reconciling Azure machine services in parallel, the things which are not dependent on each other. This is slightly different from what David had done earlier with the machine scale sets. So basically what I was trying to do here is like reconcile the Azure resources that are not dependent on each other parallelly. And so there was some feedback from David, and he also suggested a library to try it out. Ideally, we'd want to use both of these concepts together, but not sure how. So just want to get some feedback from the folks.
Has anybody looked at this PR and not made comments on it, or have any flyover comments?
I haven't yet tried the library that David had suggested. I'll probably do it next week. But if you have some time, please take a look at the PR and feel free to add comments.
David has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. David.
Thank you. Ooh, let me try to frame it up a little bit so folks who maybe haven't looked at the PR can understand the two different ideas that are going on here. There is the idea that when you go and ask Azure to do something, it may take a period of time. And the way Azure shows this is it creates an operation, and then the operation is ongoing. And in the SDK, or if you were just using the HTTP API, you would ask the HTTP API, hey, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Until it finally replies back, either I failed or succeeded. So what happens now is our SDK calls wait and do this serially. So each SDK call is itself synchronous. Now, there's two types of concurrency that we can look at. The first type is we go through and we run all of those serial calls concurrently. So we batch up a bunch of calls that would normally be serial requests to Azure, and we make those concurrent. And so each individual client is making the call to provision the resource. And maybe after all of them are successful, the whole batch is returned and you're good, right? The other side of concurrency is maybe the controller calls the API to kick off an operation, but then it just like says, okay, hey, I'm gonna requeue myself for later to go check on that. So these are the two branches of concurrency. In this PR, Cheyenne had started going down the path of concurrently reconciling resources, doing that with the concurrent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but concurrent synchronous client requests. Okay, does that make sense?
Right, yeah, the concurrent synchronous for resources that are not dependent on each other. So
is it clear the distinction between those two types of asynchrony? Nader, your hands up.
Yeah, I wonder, like, if before we add this whole complexity, we should measure actually like how much this is actually helping, because if like 5 of the 7 things are gonna kind of be dependent and wait for each other, are we really saving that much time to make the code more complex or not? So I think maybe as part of this, using this library, this PR is to actually measure the benefit of doing that.
Yeah, that was part of the concern that I had as well. And also, we can't actually do every resource concurrently, right? We actually have a kind of a graph of resources, and that's kind of what the library that I was proposing does. Now, we don't necessarily need a library to do it. We know which resources and we know the graph of resources. So it's really parallel batches of sibling levels of resources. Yeah. Cecile has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I can't see that very well. Go ahead, Cecile.
Yeah, I think I would like it if we applied similar changes than we did to Azure Machine Pool to Azure Machines, maybe first, or vice versa. If we think this is, you know, the way to go, that we apply those to Azure Machine Pool as well. The only reason I'm saying that is that we're right now we tend to diverge on the implementations between Azure Machine Pools and Azure Machines, and Azure Machine Pool has kind of been this like playground where we test new stuff because it's experimental and because we can allow ourselves that, which is cool. But I think like if eventually we want to graduate it, we need some consistency across services. And I think the feedback, like the whole like async reconciliation, like not this one, but the one that David was describing, where you don't wait for the full operation to complete before like returning control to the controller. I think that's pretty, that's a good improvement in terms of UX, just because the feedback loop is quicker when you're a user. You get to see what's going on with your machine, like as it's provisioning, as opposed to right now where it's just like, it doesn't even say creating, it just like stays pending, and or it goes to provisioning, but it has no status while it's creating. And if that takes like a minute, that means you're not going to have status for a minute. So it'd be pretty cool if we could bring that change in there. Yeah.
David?
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. And excellent points here. The difficulty that we have there is in machine pool, we really only have one resource that we're building. And we track the state of that resource in the status of the Azure Machine Pool object. So we can see that we have a future, like a promise that needs to be completed. And we hold that in the status. If we were to combine these two concurrency mechanisms, you would end up needing to keep track of each of the resources that are currently in flight, that are currently in progress, if you will. So on the status of that object, you would probably want to track each of those futures. This can get a little bit more complex, and I think that's why we haven't really tried to do that with a logical resource, a CRD that actually represents many infrastructure resources. Is that the distinction there clear?
Yeah, but the Azure machine, like the main one is the VM, right? Like the one that's going to be the long running operation. So even if there's a bunch of smaller resources around, there's still one main long running one, right?
Yeah.
That's a really great point. So if we can knock down like the UX to like say like, it responds in 3 seconds or 5 seconds, as opposed to waiting for the entire completion of the VM, that would be a huge improvement. Now, it's not going to be the like it responds in 200 milliseconds by throwing off all those requests and then updating status right away. Maybe it does a few concurrently and then starts the VM build. That might be enough for us to be good. I don't know. Open to different ideas.
Or we could also, like, if we could somehow encode the group of resources. I don't know how, like, I'm just thinking out loud, the group of resources in that promise, and we consider each as one entity, so that when we reconcile that group of resources, it'll be like how we do for scale set, but except it won't be for a single resource, it'll be for a group of resources. But I think it'll be like very complex to implement. And like Nader said, it's better to like measure it first to see if it's actually worth doing it. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, you could totally like, what are the resources? It's a NIC. Who knows? What are the resources that you need to build before you build the VM in the machine?
NIC, resource group.
Like in the cluster and the Azure machine.
In the Azure Machine Reconciler, or is this in the? I'm sorry. Remind me. Is this Azure Cluster that we're talking about, or Azure Machine?
It's the Azure Machine.
Okay, Azure Machine. So cluster's already been built.
So public IP, outbound, inbound net rules for control planes. I'm reading it. Network interface, Nick, availability sets, if there is an availability set, virtual machine, and then after the virtual machine, we have role assignments, VM extension, tags.
So what if we stayed concurrent but serial requests for the resources before? Because those can, well, those actually can't be built in parallel, right? Because you need the public IP, and the public IP is going to be on the NIC, right? Yeah, so the network configuration there is still going to need it. So, but public IPs are actually pretty fast to build. Like those are like 1 or 2 seconds maybe. So what if we built the NIC, and then the VM just gets kicked off and we store that promise. And then after that promise succeeds, we finish it off with the last resource. That probably gets us the UX that we're desiring without a ton of extra, without like a lot of extra complexity or a lot of work. And it might be just that initial investment. And maybe afterwards we see that wasn't quite enough, and we do need to have a more robust approach to it.
This is also like in the worst case scenario where everything happens, but that's not even possible actually, because some of those are specific to workers and some are specific to control planes, so it won't happen ever together. So if you're looking at like a typical like worker nodes coming up, the public IP won't happen because that's only if you allocate public IPs. So that's not happening. Inbound net rules either, because that's for control planes. The network interface is going to happen. The availability sets might not happen if you're in a zone region, so you're not going to need that. VM is going to happen. Role assignment's not going to happen unless you're using a system assigned identity. And then VM extension is going to happen, but tags is not going to happen unless you have like specific additional tags you've specified. So really we're looking at 3, and all of these are serial. You can't parallelize any of them. So they're all dependent on each other.
So we just need to make Azure faster. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, do PRs to the SDK. Sorry, I couldn't keep track with what was going on with the notes. I'll try to go back and update them.
James has a hand up.
Go ahead, James. Sorry. Oh, there, I do see it.
Cool. Hey, yeah, I think aligning the machine pools with the machines is a good idea. And then also, I would second, like maybe pulling off the one thing like the VM that's running really long to make that asynchronous. Those ideas sounded good. Other thing is, as you're kind of listing out all of the things that are dependent on each other, it would be nice to almost see that in a graph as almost a design doc or something as well, just to kind of visualize that and see what's happening. Just throw some ideas out there too.
You can't see us, but we're all nodding our heads.
Thanks. Yeah, I just finished driving, so I haven't switched over to everything yet.
All right. Do we have anything else about this PR or concurrency in general? All right, let's move on to.
Sorry, was there any action? Yeah. Like, what is the action? Somebody's going to try, are you going to try to do that in your PR, or is that, or David, are you going to try to do something, or is there no action?
I was just going to like try out the library that David had suggested and then like measure how much time it takes and see if it's like making a significant difference, and then we'll just decide the next step forward from there.
Okay.
Give that a shot, but as Cecile pointed out, all of the items are going to be dependent on each other. So the benefit of the concurrency there will be should be relatively limited. That may not be the case with other resources. Maybe with cluster, that might not be the case.
Do you think like it'll be a better idea to try it with Azure cluster then?
I think there's a lot of value in doing this to machine. Doing this being making machines asynchronous, reconciliation asynchronous. And the route that would probably be most beneficial is to set up the promise and keep the promise in the status for the machine and track the promise in a similar way that machine pools are doing it. In cluster, if you're really interested in doing like the concurrent approach with synchronous calls, cluster could benefit from that for sure. So I think you'll see it really depends on which path you want to take. I think we do need to get to similar reconciliation patterns as Cecile had pointed out in machine pool and machine. And cluster will probably be just a bit behind that because those are probably our two biggest areas of usage and most impact for user experience.
Okay, so I'll just like do the same thing that you did for scale set for Azure machines. Is that what we want to do going forward? Okay.
If that you don't think that's going to work out, or if you see a different way that's better, then let's do that. Let's figure that out.
TLDR, if you can find anything that makes it faster, we're all over it.
I'm still waiting for a force delete to be GA, and that would help us a lot for deleting VMs, because that also takes a while. Actually, sometimes more than create.
Yeah. All right. I guess let's move on to the PSA about conformance testing. Cecile.
Yeah, quick PSA, conformance testing broke on the Kubernetes main branch with our usage in Cluster API. There's a PR that merged in Kubernetes that basically changed the Docker file for the conformance image. And because of the way we were using that image in the Cluster API framework, it completely stopped running conformance testing on the main branch. So this doesn't affect conformance testing with like released versions of Kubernetes, only the ones that were running with the main branch, but that means it affects any PR tests that we're running with conformance. There is a fix that was merged by actually the author of the original PR in Kubernetes in Cluster API, which fixes like the thing, like the way we're using it to work with the new way. And that is presently not being used in CABZ because we need to pull in the latest CABD framework, which I'm working on doing as part of the other PR. So just a heads up, if you see conformance not working, that's why.
Thank you for being on top of that. Any questions about the conformance tests? Ready to look at the milestone? Let's do that.
Let's do it.
All right. Multi-tenancy support.
Is it Cheyenne has a PR for that? You probably just didn't sign yourself to this issue, right? Isn't that the one you have a PR for?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I don't think I have signed the issue.
I think it's almost ready. It looks good.
Okay, signed. Is that your?
You need the act.
Oh yeah, right. Plus, I don't think. Oh hey, it's smarter than I am. It worked. Machine pool Kate's upgrade. David?
I'm sorry. I have been pulled away into other things. I need to pick this back up and add tests. And thank you so much for the reviews, Cecile, Nader, folks who have taken a look at it. It'll also need a rebase after Cecile changes the groups. I'm going to race you, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose.
Race is on. No, I can wait, but I don't think this is going to go in the next 48 hours, and we really wanted to fix the conformance test, so you're probably going to lose.
Indeed, I'm going to lose, so I will have a nasty rebase, but we'll get that in, and I feel like I should be able to finish up the tests tomorrow, and then just get the rebase in. We should be, I think we're pretty close there.
I'll say I think we need more review eyes on this because it's a really big PR, and if anyone has time, I'd really appreciate the extra review. So, yeah.
And if there's feedback like, hey, can you break it out in a certain way? I will go back through and rebase and rip it all apart and make it easier for folks to look at. So don't hesitate to ask.
Specifically this PR, or which one is still, no, that's AWS. Which one's still outstanding? That
it should be linked to if you go to the top, linked PRs, is it in there?
Nope.
No, on the right.
Sorry, wrong one.
No, it's not there actually. Yeah, it looks like you might have to link it again, David.
Which one are we talking about? Just for
This one, add Azure machine pool rolling upgrades. Yeah.
1332.
Okay. Cool. So if we get some more eyes on this, that would be great. Oop. Move cluster describer methods to CRD types. Is Ace here? He's probably not here.
Yeah, I don't think Ace has had time to work on the project lately, so I don't think this is going to happen unless anyone else wants to pick it up. But I wouldn't say it's blocking because it's not a breaking change, so it can always happen as a follow-up anytime.
Should we unassign it from Ace to make it clear that?
Maybe just ping him and ask if he's, because he had an open PR in flight. It just needs a rebase.
Okay.
Hasn't been updated.
Come on, back button. There we go. Redesign user-facing API v1 alpha 4.
Yeah, so that one is actually like we need to get that finished for v1 alpha 4. So I've been working through those. I should actually make it more clear which ones are done and which ones are not done yet. So I'll do that today and go through them and maybe like add a checklist with like checked items for the ones that have already been done. But I've been going through them, like the manage this storage account type that's done, that merged. Renaming resource group to resource group name. I don't know if that's really necessary. I guess we can discuss the ones that I'm not sure about in the issue, but yeah. And then, yeah, remove availability zones. We did. There was one about subnets, like changing the subnet type to map. That one, the PR got closed because we decided it wasn't following conventions for not using maps in controller tools, so or CRDs.
Okay.
So we're not doing that. But yeah, I've linked all the PRs that went in for this one already.
So this is really an epic, and you're
it's more of an epic. Maybe it should be several issues.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're in the home stretch and close to getting it done.
I'm babysitting that one. Yeah.
We talked about this, right? Or is this a different renaming? Oh no, this is different.
Oh, Actually,
this
can
is
you
it.
assign that to me, please? Because I'm doing that right now.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't realize there was an issue for it. Yeah, so I'm doing that as part of the experimental group rename. So what happened is because I changed the group and it's now the same group as the non-experimental features, there's now a conflict between Azure Machine Template and Azure Machine Template, which are two different types defined in two different CRDs, or one of them is a CRD, one of them is the subfield. So I'm renaming the machine pool Azure Machine Template to Azure Machine Pool Machine Template. And then David, feel free to rename that again to whatever makes more sense once you add Azure Machine Pool Machines.
Try and get the word machine in there one more time if you can.
Yeah. Making it Azure Machine Pool Template Machine Template Machine.
There you go. Okay, refactor remaining services. Oh yeah, this is an actual epic with just a couple more things left to do, it looks like.
So can you scroll down? I think Nicholas or someone was going to said this week that they were going to start working on it.
Oh, right on.
I'm not sure if it was on the issue or, oh yeah, there we go. Finally got started
Nicola.
working on it this week.
Awesome. And that, yeah.
That really shouldn't be release blocking though, right? Milestone blocking.
It's not.
It's in the milestone, but
Yeah, because I think we're committing to doing it for this, but it's not one of the ones that we're going to hold the release for.
Okay. Windows machine naming. Nobody's, oh wait. This doesn't fix it though. Template.
Hey, yep, sorry. So somebody suggested that we align the naming differently. I think it's probably a good idea. It's be pretty straightforward, but it would be a breaking change, I believe. And I don't have any plans to do that right now.
Should we just take it out of the milestone? Because as soon as you say it would be nice, basically that means it's not happening for the next, well, you know.
Yeah, I guess the reason for putting it in the milestone is because it's a breaking change. So if we don't do it for this one, we'll have to wait until the next minor release, which might be a while. So all depends on how important or non-important this is. And if James, you're unable to work on it, would it help if someone else takes it on?
Yeah, somebody else would be great if somebody else took it up. It's
So
not a
maybe,
huge, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we mark it as help wanted and then publicize it in the channel and see if anyone has cycles to take it.
Yeah, it would be a pretty good first issue, I think. So.
And if not, we just drop it.
How do you do that again? There's a
/help.
Just /help wanted?
Yeah.
Or
no, just help.
Okay. There we go. Cluster upgrade fails when CAPC is upgraded. Yeah, more than 0.4.
So we actually fixed that in 0.416, I think. Or like the latest, right?
We fixed it in like the 0.4 branch, but we never fixed it on like the main branch. I added it to the milestone because I thought it's breaking, so I thought it made sense to do it here as well. Or
we still need to add some deprecation type warnings.
Yeah, I think we discussed this in, I think, the last office hour. So we plan to forward reporting that fix and then give some kind of warning saying that they should move all the secrets to the new spec.
Okay.
Yeah.
So So that's still the to-do item here, it sounds like.
Are you, if you don't have time to do it, I can do it. Just let me know.
Yeah, sure. You can assign to me.
Okay. All right. Anything that really should be here that we didn't put on the list that you can think of? All right.
We still have like a couple of more weeks, so we can probably revisit that again next time and decide on any final ones.
Oh, correctly. There we go. Okay. Well, that's everything on the agenda. Anybody else have anything they just thought of that we should talk about? Nope. All right, I guess we'll call it good for this week. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's always great to see you. We'll catch you in June.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Later, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a long weekend. Have a good long weekend,
Yes.
everyone in the US.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, enjoy.